The Cold War lasted 45 years. For 45 years, the United States and the Soviet Union pointed enough nuclear weapons at each other to end human civilization roughly 30 times over. Governments built command centers. Generals drew up target lists. Both sides had fail-safes and protocols and contingency plans for every scenario they could imagine. What neither side had fully accounted for was the people in the middle. The satellite operator who didn't believe his own screen. The submarine commander who said no. The spy in the wrong city at the right time. 5 people, 5 moments. One world that survived. Entry 1. Harold Herring. The man who asked the one question everyone was too scared to ask. The year is 1973. Major Harold Herring has served in the United States Air Force for 14 years. Vietnam veteran, decorated officer. He's in training to become a Minuteman missile launch control officer. The job: sit underground, wait for the order, and fire when told. At some point during that training, Major Herring raises his hand. How can I know that an order I received to launch my missiles comes from a sane president? Just to be clear, this is not him planning anything. He genuinely wants to understand the system he's been asked to operate, because the way it works, the president gives the order, the chain passes it down, the launch officer fires. There is no step where anyone checks whether the president is making a good decision. The Air Force does not have an answer to this question. What they have instead is a discharge notice. Harold Herring was removed from the program. Court-martialed. Forced out of the military in 1975 after 14 years. His question was classified. He took the case to the Supreme Court. It was dismissed. But his question eventually forced the Pentagon to implement additional verification steps, requiring a second officer to confirm any launch order before it moves up the chain. Harold Herring never launched a missile. He just asked the question the entire system couldn't answer. And it changed something. What a question. Entry 2. Oleg Gordievsky. The spy who told us we were about to start a war by accident. November 1983. NATO is running a military exercise called Able Archer 83. The idea: simulate a nuclear first strike, from political escalation all the way to launch, as realistically as possible. New codes. Radio silence, realistic alert levels. The most realistic war game they had ever run. The problem: Soviet intelligence was watching. And they thought it was real. For context, 1983 is already the most dangerous year of the Cold War since 1962. The Soviets have just shot down a Korean airliner, killing 269 people. Reagan has called them an evil empire. American Pershing II missiles, capable of hitting Moscow in 6 minutes, have just been deployed in Europe. 6 minutes. That was the margin they were working with. The Soviets are convinced the Americans are planning a first strike. When Able Archer begins, Soviet nuclear forces in East Germany and Poland are quietly put on high alert. Bombers are loaded and kept on standby. Here is where Gordievsky comes in. Oleg Gordievsky is a KGB officer stationed in London. He is also secretly a British intelligence asset. He has been passing information to MI6 for nearly a decade. In November 1983, he intercepts internal KGB communications, confirming what NATO doesn't know. The Soviets are not playing games. They believe Able Archer is preparation for a real launch. They are genuinely afraid. He passes this to MI6. MI6 passes it to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister passes it to Reagan. Reagan is reportedly shaken. He watches a film called The Day After, a dramatization of nuclear war, and writes in his diary that it left him greatly depressed. He sends private signals to Moscow. We are not preparing to attack. The exercise ends. The Soviet alert is stood down. Gordievsky defected to Britain in 1985, carried out of Moscow in the boot of a car. He was asked, years later, what would have happened without him. He said he didn't know. He didn't want to think about it. Entry 3. Boris Yeltsin, January 25, 1995. The Cold War has been over for 4 years, and we almost ended everything anyway. Norwegian scientists launch a research rocket from the island of Andøya. Purpose: study the aurora. It will travel north, arc over the Arctic, and fall harmlessly into the sea. On a Soviet-era radar screen, the launch trajectory looks almost identical to a U.S. Navy Trident missile from a submarine in the Norwegian Sea. The alert goes up the chain. Fast. Within minutes, the Russian military has notified the Kremlin that an apparent American nuclear missile has been launched toward Russia. For the first time in history, the first and only time this has ever happened, the nuclear briefcase is activated. Yeltsin is handed it. He has minutes to decide whether to launch a retaliatory strike. If Yeltsin authorizes a launch, Russian missiles are heading for American cities within minutes. American early warning systems detect the launch. The American response is automatic. Yeltsin watches the trajectory. 8 minutes in, the rocket curves away toward the sea. It is not heading toward Russia. It is not a missile. He stands down. The Norwegian government had notified Russia of the planned launch weeks earlier. The notification had been sent to the Russian Foreign Ministry. The Foreign Ministry had failed to pass it to the military. 4 years after the Cold War ended, the world almost ended because someone forgot to send an email. Entry 4. Stanislav Petrov. September 26, 1983. 2 months after the Korean airliner. 1 month before Able Archer. The most dangerous year of the Cold War. And it's about to get worse. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov is the duty officer at Serpukhov 15, a secret Soviet command bunker south of Moscow. Tonight, he's covering someone else's shift. At EO-014, the alarm goes off. The satellite system is reporting 1 Minuteman missile launched from the United States. Then 2, then 3, a 4th, a 5th. 5 confirmed U.S. nuclear missiles, incoming, 11 minutes to impact. Petrov does not pick up the phone. He stares at the screen. And he thinks. His reasoning. If the Americans were launching a nuclear first strike, they would not launch 5 missiles. No military planner in history has opened a war with 5 missiles. You don't start World War III with 5 missiles. You launch hundreds. You launch everything. Also, the system was new. Known to have bugs. The satellite had been staring into the sun at an unusual angle. A reflective cloud formation had been misidentified as missile exhaust. Petrov classified the alert as a malfunction. He was right. He was not decorated for this. He was reprimanded for failing to maintain a proper duty log during the incident. He received no formal recognition until 2006, when a World Citizens Association gave him a small award in New York. He was moved to tears. Stanislav Petrov died in 2017. His neighbors didn't find out for several months. The man who saved the world died alone in an apartment in Fryazevo, and almost no one noticed. Entry 5. The closest the world has ever come to nuclear war. October 27, 1962. Day 13 of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and nobody on either side knows about this until 1992. Soviet submarine B-59 has been at sea for weeks. No radio contact with Moscow. Air conditioning failed. Temperature inside, 45 degrees Celsius. The crew is running low on oxygen, low on battery power, and completely exhausted. They don't know what's happening on the surface. What's happening on the surface? The U.S. Navy has detected B-59 and is forcing it up using practice depth charges, small explosives designed to signal rise and surface. The Americans assume the Soviets know these are practice rounds. The Soviets do not know. They hear explosions for hours. They believe they are under attack. They believe war has started. The captain of B-59 is Valentin Savitsky. He has had enough. We're going to blast them now. We will die, but we will sink them all. We will not disgrace our Navy. B-59 carries 1 nuclear torpedo. It has the explosive yield of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Firing it at an American naval vessel would not have been a provocation. It would have been a nuclear strike. Soviet protocol required the agreement of 3 officers to fire the nuclear torpedo. The captain, the political officer, and the flotilla commander who happened to be aboard. Captain Savitsky. Yes. Political officer Maslenikov. Yes. Flotilla commander Vasili Arkhipov. No. He talked Savitsky down. No one recorded the exact words. What we know is that Arkhipov argued the explosions were warning signals, not an attack. He said they should surface and wait for orders. Savitsky agreed. B-59 surfaced. The American destroyers were waiting. No shots were fired. 30 years later, when the documents were finally declassified, Thomas Blanton of the National Security Archive said, "A guy called Vasili Arkhipov saved the world." He wasn't being dramatic. The nuclear torpedo had a 10-kiloton warhead. There were 11 American aircraft carriers in the area. The American president did not know this submarine existed. The Soviet premier did not know what was happening inside it. One man, in a boiling oxygen-deprived steel tube 45 degrees below the Atlantic. He said no. That was the vote. That was the margin. Vasili Arkhipov died in 1998. His wife found out about what he had done at a conference in 2002. 5 people. A major who raised his hand. A spy in the wrong city at the right time. A president who watched a rocket turn away. A lieutenant colonel who didn't pick up the phone. A commander who said 2 letters. The Cold War had generals, governments, strategies, and failsafes. It had command structures and contingency plans and enough firepower to end everything 30 times over. And 5 times, at least 5 times we know of, it came down to one person, in one room, making one call. They didn't save the world because they were ordered to. They saved it because they weren't.